Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today I have Bryan Boorstein back on for our reoccurring podcast check-in here. I don't know why I said weekly. We definitely don't have you hop on here weekly. If that were the case, you would just be basically a co-host, I feel like at that point.
You run three a week though, don't you? So that's
Yeah,
still only a third of the time.
yeah, yeah. Do the two solo episodes and then usually try to get at least one guest on a week there. But yeah, man, thanks for coming back on. Always fun to chat with you. Like I said, I with these episodes, we're checking in, seeing how your training's doing, and then just kind of have a grab bag of training stuff to always talk about. I feel like there's not hasn't been a ton of hypertrophy research that we necessarily need to dive into. I feel like every once in a while there's some sort of new research around that. Although there is one thing that I wanted to talk to you about there. But yeah, man. So I guess since it's been a couple months since we chatted, what's been going on? Anything big on your end? And then obviously I want to hit on training. How's that going for you?
Yeah, as far as big on my end, nah, nothing's really changed too much. Just doing the things that I do this time of year, which is starting to bike more, get outside more, put a little bit less stress on the lifting side of things. And kids are just out of school. So I have a new kindergartner. My daughter just graduated preschool. So she'll be starting kindergarten in the end of the summer. My son graduated first grade. So he'll be a second grader. For the first time, they're both going to be going to the same school.
Oh
So we'll
well.
only have one drop off and it's a half a mile away, which means we're not even going to have to drive anymore. We get to like bike and walk to school. So we really feel like things are opening up because literally, like driving my daughter to school and back is a half hour on the front end of the day and a half hour on the back end of the day. So I'm about to get like an extra hour of life back, which is awesome. Summer camps are going to be cool. Day one today, they're doing like an adventure camp with some canoeing and kayaking and biking and hiking and stuff like that.
That's awesome. So basically, when the kids are off, you still find stuff for them to do like throughout the day. They're not just like at home all summer long.
No, man, absolutely not. What would I do with myself? No, yeah, like it would literally be like every 10 minutes, it would be like, can I watch iPad? Hey, Dad, can I watch iPad now? Hey, Dad, watch me do this dunk. Hey, Dad, can I watch iPad? No, but so seriously, we have them in camps all summer. Aside from, we have a week-long trip to Wisconsin on the lake where my wife is from. And then we have a week-long trip where we're going to drive out to Yellowstone and Grand Tetons and do the kind of national park thing that we've been wanting to do now that the kids are old enough to remember it. And so, yeah, we have those two trips. My wife and I have a robust concert lineup this summer,
Nice.
especially in June. We're seeing four concerts in June, which is a lot. I think that's the most concerts I've ever gone to in a month. So yeah, just ramping up for that and living my best life.
What are some of the concerts? And are they at, man, what's that super popular park in Red Rocks? Yeah. Are they there? Or?
Yeah, we're seeing three at Red Rocks. So
Nice.
this Saturday we're going to downtown to a club to see some EDM music, which we
Nice.
like. And then on the 12th, we're seeing Stick Figure at Red Rocks. Love Stick Figure, favorite reggae band. They're amazing. The 21st, we're seeing OAR at Red
Oh,
Rocks.
cool. Wow.
OAR grew up in the same town as me or same county. And so I knew about them from like when I was in high school. And they were the first concert that my wife and I saw together back in 2006. We're going to see them at Red Rocks. And then 3 days later at Red Rocks, we're seeing Charlie Crockett. And I've never heard of Charlie Crockett, but I have some friends who are really obsessed with him. He's like a folk country type singer. And we're going to go tag along with them and check him out.
That's awesome. First of all, I forgot about OAR, honestly, until you brought them up. I haven't heard about them in a long, they are good. I guess when you go to Red Rocks, is it pretty much make every other concert experience not as good?
Red Rocks is a venue unlike any other, but from friends I've known that have gone to the Gorge in Seattle, they've said that's at least as good
Never heard
as
of that.
Red Rocks. So I'm very much looking forward to going there at some point. And then, yeah, I would say those two are probably the two that stand out the most in my mind as iconic venues in our country. I'm sure I'm missing a couple, but the Gorge is definitely up there in competition with Red Rocks.
I've heard with Red Rocks, it's pretty much like it's a hike to get there, right? Like where you park and stuff, you have to go uphill. And I'm assuming probably afterwards you'd have to go uphill, maybe, or maybe
It
it's uphill on the way. I don't know.
It's uphill on the way there. So you park at the bottom and then you walk a mile up. And there's literally no way you can get to your seats without your heart rate going into zone four at least. Because, like, even once you climb up the massive hill to get to the entrance to Red Rocks, then you have to climb up the hundreds of stairs that lead you to your seat. Because the way it's built is on this, like, super steep angle into the rocks. And yeah, like, I've had periods of time where my heart rate's been just like in zone four for like half of that walk.
People that are, because again, if you're getting in zone four doing that, I'm sure people travel to go there. And obviously they start doing that in Colorado. Like, how did they have like shuttles or something that can get some people up there or what?
No, I actually don't know the answer to that. There is a top parking lot, but it always fills up super fast. So I don't think most people get to park up there. But dude, I've seen so many people as I bound the stairs, which is why I'm getting into zone four. There's people that will take 6 steps and then there'll be a landing and they'll stop and rest. And then they'll do 6 more steps and stop and rest. I'm not talking about really out of shape people, but even people that you would think look pretty normal and in shape are still taking it slow, like one doing the thing. When you climb stairs, you can either skip a stair, you can put one foot on each stair, or you can put both feet on the same stair. There's a lot of people going both feet on the same stair, like all the way up.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I guess, yeah, people are going to be stopping all the time too to take a rest. Man, that's crazy. That's a nice little workout before the concert.
for sure.
You can plan those into your activity for the day a little extra. For you being at higher altitude, I'm assuming that plays to your advantage for cardio adaptations.
It only plays to your advantage when you go to sea level and then you have
Okay.
the adaptations from elevation. But being here, this is just the new normal. Like nothing. Yeah, it's just the new normal. I can't say that it's great. And it's actually the downside is that when I do go to sea level, like when we do our week in Wisconsin or whatever, I come back from that week and my first session or two back, I feel like winded and out of breath and I can't push as hard. It's like you get the advantage going to sea level, but then when you come back, you have to build back up again. I don't know if it's an advantage or not. As far as like cellular respiratory processing and all that, I think that the data does show that there's some inherent advantage to red blood cell capacity or something like that being at higher altitude, which is why people do altitude training to begin with. But I also don't know how much being at like 5,000 feet is that different
Yeah.
when you have people training at 10,000 feet or 12,000 feet or whatever, and Everest is at 29,000 feet.
That's crazy. So even within a week, you're noticing some, what would that be? De-adaptation essentially to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I do like slightly, very slightly, but it comes back really quickly too. But one thing that is actually interesting is so heart rate, resting heart rate goes lower at sea level. So I go about 3 or 4 beats lower just simply by leaving elevation and going to sea level. And then I do this breath hold after exhale. Have you seen this? It's a test of kind of your ability to, oh God, but basically you take in a breath through your nose, you
And hold
exhale
it.
the breath out of your
So
nose, and then you hold it at the bottom. So when you have no air left, you hold it and see how long you can hold it for. It depends on time of day and where my heart rate is and stuff. But in the mornings or in the afternoon, we'll say, I'm 15 or 20 seconds at elevation is where the point where I have to stop and breathe in. When I go to sea level, I could hold it at least 10 seconds longer, if not more.
that's crazy. So when you make that first switch over, it's you can hold it for 10 seconds longer just at sea level.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that's if I'm holding it for 20 and then I can hold it 10 more, that's like a 50% increase.
I was just thinking, I'm like, man, I haven't been to Colorado for a while, but I forgot I was there last March and I noticed it. I guess I didn't really do too much like anything that would really stress my cardiovascular system. But I do remember the first time I went there, we went hiking a couple times and I did like notice that off the bat. Like it was definitely significantly harder. I felt more out of breath, but I didn't really notice it this last time. Looking back, I wish I would have done some sort of cardio while I was there just to test it out.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're just lifting and you're taking rest between sets and doing like the N1 thing, like you get winded from a set of hack squats. It doesn't feel so different whether you're at sea level or not sea level. I think cardio is where you feel it a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, they even say too, like with the professional athletes, I wonder how big of a role that plays for them when they come into Colorado in terms of like how that impacts them. From my understanding, it probably will, even though they're probably in great, a lot of them are in great cardiovascular shape. I would
Oh yeah.
imagine it still is going to impact them a little bit. Home field
It
advantage there.
exactly. Yeah, they talk about that as a home field advantage for the Denver teams. Absolutely. If you're used to playing at sea level and you come here, then for sure you're going to get winded faster, have to rotate players more often, etc.
Yeah, that's crazy. Human body's awesome. You mentioned for you, like getting outside a little bit more. I feel like you're pretty much outside all year round. Like you figure out a way. It's just now you can spend what, just a little bit more time, you feel like outside now that it's warmer and everything like that.
Yeah, I would say my time outside only increases this time of year because I'm biking instead of running. And as we've talked about, you can get the benefits from running in 30 to 40 minutes that you would need 90 minutes for if you're biking. I'm biking more, which means I'm outside more. My walking doesn't really change. It's just more enjoyable. Like getting bundled up in winter gear and 18 layers and a hat and gloves and boots and all of that stuff to go for a walk. It's just so daunting.
Hey,
In the summer, man, you just walk outside and you're like, oh my God, life is amazing. This is so great.
does it get pretty warm in Colorado?
Yeah, like August and early September are quite hot. Like it can get into the mid to high 90s for a few days at a time. But there's not really any different than being at sea level. When we were in Scottsdale, for example, it was like over 100 a couple days. And because it's dry, you don't really even sweat that much. And then we were in Mexico and Costa Rica, where it would be in the 80s, which is way cooler. but because of the humidity, you just feel like you're sticky and sweaty the moment you walk outside.
Yeah, here in St. Louis in like August, dude, it gets so freaking humid and it's 95 to 100 degrees. It's freaking,
Yeah.
it's nasty. I love the heat, but man, that's you can only spend so much time outside there. The more I learn about the body, man, I think it's good to put yourself in these different kind of temperature zones and stuff like that. I really want to take Dr. Mike Nelson's physiologic cert class. I think that was
Mhm.
super cool. I'm intrigued by cold and heat and stuff like that. Do you do any of that, or do you just do it based off getting outside and stuff like that?
Yeah, I do heat. If I were to say why I don't do cold, I think there's two reasons. One is that I just don't enjoy it and I'm a
It
pansy
sucks.
about it. But that's not the main reason. The main reason is just that I feel like the research on the longevity benefits of cold are far inferior to that of heat. And heat I find enjoyable. And like I said, cold I do not. So given that, I think that heat is just where I tend to gravitate to. We have a steam shower in my house, and that has been amazing because I guess I'd prefer a sauna if I really had to put one against the other. But having a steam shower is just incredible because I can go in there, just hit a button, wait 5 minutes, and it preheats. And then I step in and I immediately have this like super warm, cozy experience. It's not so fun toward the end, but the first like 10 minutes are great. And then it's 10 minutes of, oh my God, I'm like itching to get out of here. But that's where the benefit is.
So it gets hot to the point where you want to get out of there
Oh,
eventually.
yeah. So you can turn it up to, it peaks at 115 degrees. That's actually too hot, I believe. You begin to cook inside. I've read that somewhere between 107 and 110 is a sweet spot for steam. I feel like I could sit in 107 forever, though. So personally, I like to push the limit and just see where I can go. Like you hear Rogan talk about how he saunas at 220 or 240 or something stupid like that. Granted, it's different heat when it's steam, but I like to push the limit of what I can tolerate for a 15 or 20-minute period.
So you're saying if you had a sauna, you would rather do that than the steam?
I would because it goes back to that conversation we just had about like the Costa Rica and Mexico or St. Louis humidity versus the dry heat. Sauna with the dry heat, I just vibe better. I feel better in dry heat than I do in wet. And yeah, I'm not really sure how to describe it aside from the humidity piece. Like it just feels
Yeah.
like being in a really humid environment versus a dry environment.
No, I agree. I'm with you, man. I definitely the heat I would enjoy more, but that makes me wonder if I need to just do a little bit of cold from time to time. Like last night, dude, it's like getting in the shower and it like took a little bit to warm up and it was pretty cold. I'm like, fuck it, I'm not going in until it gets warm. But I'm like, man,
Yeah.
you should, I feel like you should be able to do at least a little bit of that. But no, I definitely think though, from like a hypertrophy research standpoint, like you obviously don't want to go and do that like right after. And but I think you hit on the longevity piece more than anything than the hypertrophy. I know the hypertrophy like that pretty much like right after. Okay, that's probably a no go there for that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like what the longevity research shows is that the heat is generally good for pretty much everything, and cold is primarily good for the conversion of to brown fat,
Oh,
which is
fat,
like
yeah.
the good fat that you want that is metabolically active. And that's the primary benefit of the cold dunk, along with the endorphin piece. So there's the feel good chemicals that come from it, which you also get from heat, but I think you get it a little bit differently with the catecholamine response from the cold.
Heat too. We work out. We like to sweat too. I love that's honestly probably my most favorite part about doing the cardio is just the sweat and feeling that afterwards. I love because like sometimes with hypertrophy training, like at least for me, when it's super cold in the garage, like I'm not really breaking a sweat. Now when it gets hot out, no matter what I am, and then obviously some sessions it's like you're pushing yourself legs, like you're gonna break a sweat. But with the cardio, that's pretty much a guaranteed. Hey, you're breaking a sweat, and man, I just feel so good when I do that.
Yeah, the next like 15 or 20 minutes after completing a cardio session where you're done with it and you have the like self-validation of doing it, which sucked probably because it's cardio, and then also the post-exercise kind of catecholamine endorphin high, it really is unmatchable.
You do feel good. I think it was the other night, I was just like getting to the point, like I was just kind of, you ever just sit there, you're not doing much, and you're like starting to just get in your head about stuff. And I'm like, you know what, dude, I got to go hit my cardio and do it. And then you just feel like so much better
Hmm.
afterwards. Like that's why I freaking love doing that. And cardio, it's just different, right? Like you have to push, like you have to push through hypertrophy training, but you really have to sit there and push through, like at least for me, like sitting on the bike and stuff like that. Like to me, that's part of the adaptation is like sitting there just bored and pushing
Hmm.
through that boredom almost in a way.
Yeah, just like letting your legs continue to churn even though it sucks. Yeah, just getting that aerobic adaptation. I agree.
And everything else is telling you to get off and do something
Yeah,
else. But
sorry.
no,
There
good.
is what you noted about that almost like an impending sense of dread if I have to do this cardio session or whatever. We talked about that on I started a new podcast called Life
Yeah.
Reflected. That's not like super training based, but we talk about that on there. In every episode, we talk about the guests' kind of movement routine and what they do to instill movement into their day. And that's one of the questions I always like to ask people is how they feel like mentally or psychologically when they have a workout that they have to do and it's either hanging over their head or they end up missing it because like life gets in the way. Like, how does that affect your mental health and your mental state at that time? I find that an interesting question.
I think we talked about this last time, but yeah, that is a good thing to ponder. If you don't get it, what does that do to your,
Yeah.
because like there's that fine line of, okay, sometimes shit's going to pop up and you can't necessarily always train, but at the same time, it's like training helps keep you grounded. So I guess it's more so like, how do you manage like missing a session almost in a way? Like, I guess that's a thing that you can adapt to as well, right? Okay,
Mm.
hey, it's just one session. Cause I know for me, like even the last couple of weeks, I've had to miss a little bit more cardio than I wanted. I freaking tell my clients, I'm like, it's just one session, go and just get some movement in, like it's going to be
Yeah.
fine. But when it's like me, I'm like, shit, man, if I do this, what's going to happen to my cardiovascular fitness? Am I going to be
Yeah,
going
yeah.
backwards? Am I doing enough? Like you just start asking yourself all these questions.
Yeah, exactly. And then so there's that, and then there's also the almost like addictive side to it where you crave that kind of chemical milieu that occurs post-workout or whatever. So it's all involved.
But it's like, what is that fine line of doing it for the mental health to keep you like feeling good there? But then
Right.
also, what is that balance? What have you found to be helpful for you there with that balance?
Yeah, I certainly trend toward the side of being like a little more addictive in my behaviors across multiple aspects of my life. I've realized a high stimulus individual, like I need a lot of stimulation all the time, or at least I search for it. And so I think that's where meditation and breath work and stuff like that have been so valuable for me. I very much struggle with that. And because I trend toward that addictive behavior with the exercise, I both feel guilty and the impending doom of I have this session that I have not done yet. And then also the lack of the neurotransmitters and the catecholamines and stuff that I crave to flush across my body. So I get it from both ends and it's challenging.
For me, it's interesting as you're talking about this, when you talk about the impending kind of like dread of going to do a training session, especially the cardio side of things. It's like I have found I do not like to train early in the day. Like I need to train later in the day. But then I have that too, where it's like, crap, I still have to get this in. But it's like I
Yeah.
also feel better when I train a little bit
Hmm.
later. And I just don't like, I don't know what it is, man. Like training before like noon, I just freaking hate. I don't know if that's like a train response or just
Mm.
my genetic make. I don't know what it is, but I just find like earlier training, I just do not
I
like.
just feel so much better the rest of the day after I get my training in.
Yeah.
And I think that's both part of relinquishing the training hanging over my head, but also it's the milieu of neurotransmitters and all that stuff that floods me. And literally, like I can train at whatever hour, and then for the rest of the day until I go to sleep, I feel amazing. But until I train, it's not that I feel bad. Like right now, it's what are we at? 10:30 a.m. And I haven't trained yet. In fact, usually I will have gotten a walk in by now. I haven't even gotten a walk in because camps this morning with like late drop off and blah, blah, blah. Like it's just, I've done nothing today. And yeah, like I feel mentally like a little bit lethargic. I feel like I could feel better. And as soon as we finish this, I'm going to go do my full body workout in the gym and go for a walk. And then for the rest of the day after that, I'm going to feel significantly better.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting that you pretty much feel better the rest of the day. I'll have to pay attention to that. But again, I also don't train till like between 3 and 5 most days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that feeling is a shorter amount of time versus if I did it like earlier in the day. But I do
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's a little bit of train response to if you can push yourself to start to train earlier in the day if you really needed to. And I would too. If I had to, I would absolutely push it up earlier. But I mean, I feel like it probably would just take some time to adapt to that and you'd start to feel better over. One other thing too, in terms of like skipping the cardio, for me, I feel like that weighs on me a bit more than if I were to like move around my hypertrophy training. And I think the reason being is because I feel a lot more confident in programming for hypertrophy. And I feel like I'm more confident in like the adaptation around hypertrophy, whereas like cardiovascular fitness, I feel like I have pretty good knowledge on it, but there's still a lot of things that I'm like, I could learn how to be like more flexible with it and how to be more
Mm-hmm.
flexible with it, if that makes sense. I feel like it's like I need to continue to do it more for myself to get that true, like deep understanding of it. And I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
part of why maybe that weighs on me a bit more when I miss that versus the hypertrophy.
Maybe. I guess I just find like take zone two out of it, but comparing like a hard cardio session to a weightlifting session, I just find weightlifting to be so much easier, like less painful, easier. You get rest periods, like you're never working for more than 30 or 45 seconds at a time. Like a hard VO2 max workout is one of the things that hangs over my head and makes me like miserable until I get it done. Talking like a 3 minute on, 2 minute off for 8 to 10 rounds, something along those lines. That type of thing, just dreadful.
Yeah. Speaking of, I think this is a good topic too to talk about psych intervals and stuff like that. What do you enjoy the best there with that? Because I know for me, like you've programmed, I think it was like, what were we doing initially? It was like five, was
Initial
it?
5 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
And then now we're down to 30 seconds on and then 30 seconds off. What do you
We did the
find?
3 minutes on, 2 minutes off in between. So we worked our way down from longer to shorter.
And what's once you are able to push for say 3, 4, 5 minutes, now we can ramp up that intensity and get you like into a higher intensity for a shorter amount of time, or is that just like natural progression that you typically see? Or yeah, what's the thought behind that?
They're all just effective. I think when you look at the research on VO2 max adaptations, the goal is just to spend a certain amount of time in zone. And it really doesn't matter so much. You can nuance your way to 1, 2, 3 percentile, like really trying to get the final gains of my cardio adaptations or whatever. But for the most part, just accumulating time in zone, which depending on your zone, I like to see people usually about 15 minutes if it's zone 5 and about 30 minutes if it's zone 4, high zone 3 type stuff. But accumulating that time in zone is like the equivalent of in lifting, like you're lifting with sufficient intensity and volume, you're recovering and you're eating enough food and you're sleeping. Like that gets you 97% of the way or 98% of the way to your best physique. And in the same way, like your VO2 max adaptations are going to respond to just total time in zone. From there, you can tweak it a little bit. Like, for example, when you're training VO2 max, you pretty much want a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. The 5 minutes of rest works well, 3 minutes with 2 minutes of rest works well, and 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off works well. Any of those kind of get you that 1-to-1. But when you're looking more for aerobic adaptations, so if we were to try to stay like just slightly under VO2 max and train a little bit longer endurance that's above zone 2, in that one, you need a much longer work to rest ratio. So you might see 12 minutes on, 3 minutes off type thing for 3 rounds or 4 rounds or something like that. So because the intensity is so much lower, you're accumulating a lot more time in zone. And then you can even go on the other side of VO2 max and you could go anaerobic intervals. And now you're talking about intervals where the work period is shorter than the rest period. So 30 seconds on, 2 minutes off, and repeat that 8 or 10 times. But you're going so freaking hard that you feel like you really need that 2 or 2.5 minute recovery between each one of those intervals. So all of those serve a purpose and are effective in their own way.
And the ones we're doing now, the 30 on, 30 off, that's still going to be more, you said that's more VO2. Would that be more aerobic or is that different there, aerobic versus VO2 max, or is that like
Yeah,
similar?
so VO2 max is the very top of your aerobic range. It's like the
Okay.
highest point of your aerobic range. But if we really wanted to like, work the aerobic engine, we wouldn't be doing VO2 max intervals. We'd probably be doing more of those like
Long distance.
slightly less intense, longer intervals. Yeah.
Because like you said, that's going to build that base and the VO2 max more that like how hard you can push it for a certain amount of times, essentially, right?
It's like how hard of your maximum output, how high is that peak? And then the aerobic is what percentage of your peak can you hold for X duration?
And then when we talk anaerobic, that's just more. What would be the difference there? Is that just the style of training? And again, obviously, we're talking about the energy system here that we're utilizing, but like, how does that fit into like cardiovascular fitness and everything like that?
Yeah, it really doesn't for someone like us. I kind of am of the mindset that if we lift weights, and while the entire blood flow system of lifting weights and cardio are totally different, we're still training the anaerobic energy system very effectively with weight training. Like literally what we're doing is 30 to 45 seconds on and 2 to 3 minutes off. So we're doing an anaerobic interval. And since anaerobic means without oxygen, it almost doesn't matter that the turnover, the cycle time, is slower in weightlifting. So, for example, I might do a set of hack squats for 6 reps and it might take me 45 seconds. Whereas if I was doing a 45-second interval on a bike, I might get 180 repetitions in or something like that. So while the blood flow system is different between those two, they both fall into the anaerobic spectrum. So I'm not even so concerned about creating an aerobic cyclical effect in an anaerobic interval. I just think that because we lift weights, we're checking that box and then we can focus on VO2 max and then the more like lower end aerobic stuff.
So who would benefit the most from anaerobic type
A
work?
power athlete would. Like if you're somebody that like you're training for a sport that has 20 to 60-second all-out efforts, like you're running a 400-meter or less, then you're likely training with a lot of anaerobic work because you need to make sure that you're recovering not just a little bit, but very effectively between each one of those intervals. Somebody whose time domain for what they're doing is anything above 3 minutes or so, like they're going to be doing a lot more aerobic work just because now you're with oxygen at that point. Like the true all out anaerobic interval, like if you went on an Airdyne bike and you were just like, let me go as hard as I possibly can until I'm not going as hard anymore. So you get the watts up as high as you can, and then you stop as soon as you can't get those watts where they were. Like if they start sinking, that's 12 or 15 seconds. That's about the capacity of what we can do all out, so to speak, without losing anything.
So would sprint training kind of fall
Sprint
into that?
training is anaerobic. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. You kind of mentioned like you want to you're resting enough in between, and that's obviously I'm assuming to make sure you can maintain that like output and performance each time you do it, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
in turn, having a good solid aerobic base will also like help you speed up that recovery time as well too. So it's
For
just
sure.
because somebody wants to train like anaerobic, like they still, and this comes back to us as lifters, like you still want to have that aerobic base, so then that way you can recover faster and everything like that in between your sets and whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. Any of these sprint training athletes are still doing plenty of aerobic work. Like it's not like Usain Bolt never goes out and runs a 5K.
Yeah. And so with now to come back to what I'm doing with the 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, more VO2 max style, the main difference being the rest time. And like I'm assuming maybe the output, I guess a little bit, or should the output still be pretty much max effort in that 30 seconds?
It's not max effort in the 30 seconds because it's sustainable across each 30-second period. So it's like the
Okay.
max effort you can sustain. The whole nature of something being aerobic is that it's sustainable. Whatever it is that you're doing is sustainable. If you treated that 30 seconds as an all out, and then you rested 30 seconds, your next 30-second period would be so far below your first 30-second period because after going 30 seconds all out, you're going to need 2 or 3 minutes
Gotcha.
to recover enough to do that again, maybe even more.
So the key being the rest times, but the big thing being like you're trying to, whatever you're trying to do in that time, you're trying to sustain for whatever.
What you've noticed with the 30-30s that we do is you do 10 of them and then you get a 5 minute break.
Yeah.
So you're basically keeping your heart rate elevated for what's equivalent of a 10-minute period. So your heart rate doesn't actually come, when you look at your graph of those 30-second rest periods, you're probably not seeing your heart rate come down a ton. Like you're not seeing a jagged graph with a high and a low and a high and a low. It almost looks just like a stable line that's straight across, even though you're resting in between each one.
And the key being we want to hit that threshold of, again, I don't know if you're like pulling these numbers out of that's the number we want to get or if it's just dependent on the person, but we're trying to go for that time and zone of 15-ish minutes altogether of zone 4, zone whatever it may be.
Zone 5, yeah, exactly.
Zone 4, zone 5, yeah.
Yep.
That time you gave of 15 minutes, is that like a threshold that everyone wants to hit, or is that kind of a number that you can vary just depending on the person, where they're at?
Yeah, so I would say a ceiling would be 20 minutes of time in zone 5 would be like more than anyone would need. Like regardless of your level of athlete, whether you're a professional cyclist or just Joe Schmo, like one of us just trying to train for like longevity and health. I think 20 minutes is a ceiling of time in zone 5. Like you wouldn't want to spend more time than that or you're going to pay the price on the recovery end. And then I think when you're getting to that lower, more sustainable aerobic intervals like zone 4, high zone 3 type stuff, I think 40 minutes is a ceiling for zone 4, but if you're mixing in some zone 3 and stuff like that, I think you could go up to about 60 minutes.
In one session or like throughout the entire week?
No, that's per session.
Zone 2, really, you could just do as much as you can possibly do, like basically.
It's not that it's not fatiguing, it's just so significantly less fatiguing that you can do a ton of it. And if you really care about your aerobic base, then you should probably build that over time so that you are doing it.
For somebody that has a lot of time, the most max time, like I guess having it broken up like that's going to be key. But someone that ends up having less time to train throughout the week, then we can bias a little bit higher heart rate probably throughout the week. If
Absolutely. Yeah, if you only have 3 days a week to do cardio, I generally recommend one like zone 4, zone 5 session, one zone 3, zone 4 session, and then one zone 2, which is what you and I are doing.
Yeah, and ideally we're doing what the higher zone is going to be shorter time, the zone 3, zone 4-ish is going to be moderate time, and then zone 2, obviously, if you can try and get as high as you can with that time
Yep.
within reason, that's what you want to hit there.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? Because it's to me, it's kind of hard to notice. I guess it's not, but again, I guess the goal being like ideally over time, we should be able to do more stuff, recover better, but then we should also be able to do more intense things for longer periods of time. Ideally, the speed that I'm going now on zone 2 and the speed that I'm going on like the zone 4, zone 5, what I'm doing now, if I could just somehow go back to where I was 2 years ago, I should be able to accumulate a lot more now at this point.
Yeah, your output is significantly higher, right? So your time in zone might still be the same as it was 2 years ago, but the output, that the watts or the effort that
How
you're
hard you're going.
how hard you're going based on the machine that you're using, it would assume that you're going at a faster pace or working harder in some level, even though physiologically your metrics are showing you that you're still spending the same amount of time in zone 4 or zone 5.
And I'm assuming this is where it can get confusing of people using like different modalities and stuff in terms of their cardio. It's to me, it's similar to constantly changing up your exercises in hypertrophy. It's like you're still going to see some progress, but it's going to be harder to measure other than, you know what I'm saying? Like based off that. But obviously, again, there's general things that we could probably look at, right? HRV and resting heart rate, stuff like that, and just how you feel. But
Yeah, definitely. If you care about the data and the diagnostics, then having consistency in the type of modality that you use would be helpful. But I think the majority of the population of people that your listeners are and my followers are not people that are necessarily so concerned with optimizing their aerobic output. They're likely doing it just for health longevity, feeling like they need to check the box or that it makes them feel amazing or whatever. And they're probably less concerned with the dogmatic obsession with numbers when it comes.
when people are doing these sessions again and they don't want to get those like super hard numbers, would you just basically tell them like, if we're doing our longer distance stuff, hey, you don't want to be overly tight. Would you just give them like, I guess, what are some simple things that they can focus on to make sure? Like, again, with hypertrophy, it's okay. Yes, we want to track our stuff. Again, if you're getting to the point to where, hey, each kind of set's getting challenging, it's like, hey, you're probably pushing things close enough there. What would be a similar thing to say from like a cardio standpoint?
Yeah, for zone 2, I would just say make it conversational level. Go at what would be considered like an RPE 5. Not so easy that you feel like you could play a video game or maybe you could play a video game, but read a book. I wouldn't want to read a book while I'm doing zone 2, but you're not dying. It's pretty consistent, pretty sustainable. You could have a phone call on it and the person would know you're exercising, but not be like, dude, why are you talking to me? You're so out of breath. So yeah, something like that. And then yeah, for zone 3, zone 4 stuff, like kind of that range between those two, which would be around 80 to 83, 78 to 83% of max heart rate, something like that. You should be able to have a conversation, but it would be hard. You'd be like, oh, why am I talking right now? I'd much rather not talk. I also tend to think of it as that's the point where I no longer want to listen to a podcast. Like in zone 2, I'm all about podcasts. Like I can stay calm enough that I'm ingesting information, I'm processing it, I'm able to focus on the podcast. Once I get into that zone 3, zone 4 range, I very much need music or no sound because I'm not really paying attention to whatever's coming into my ears. It's just background noise at that point. And then when you get into, I would say that's like an RPE 7, maybe 7.5, something like that. And then when you get into zone 5, it's your entire sense of being is just trying to survive. Like it's literally a survival mechanism. It's the equivalent of a hack squat set to failure or something along those lines. And it's not fun and it really hurts. And you mentally have to just turn your brain off and try to focus on anything except the pain, but you feel the pain, it's just there, and then you rest and you do it again a few times. So that's like an RPE.
As you're saying this, I was starting to think, honestly, the 30, and this could just be how I'm going about it. We've talked about maybe I needed to increase my intensity a little bit, but like for me, the 30-30s have been the easiest out of the higher intensity interval stuff. Like the 3 minutes, the 5 minutes, that was hard, dude, to keep up. That, to me, that was the most challenging one there. I don't know if that's just, again, based on maybe like my kind of physiology and what that looks like or what I've done in the past. But to me, that was the most challenging one overall.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. The way my body operates is that I can actually do really well if I even have a small amount of recovery. So I've recently started going 40-20s instead of 30-30s. And I've found that I'm able to keep almost the exact same pace that I keep on the 30-30s when I'm doing 40-20s because just that little bit of recovery is like enough. And they hurt more. They certainly hurt more than the 30-30s, but I'm still able to do it. And so that's been an interesting experiment that is the case. And so when I'm doing something and I want to make it a little bit more aerobic, I'll shift to the 40-20 instead of the 30-30, but keep that same structure where it's 10 sets of it and then rest 5 minutes type thing. So maybe that'll be our next progression. We can go to 40-20s after
Yeah.
this.
Again, the 30-30. So I think with any of this, like same thing with hypertrophy, you got to give it a couple weeks to dial in like where you need to be at with everything. And it's definitely more challenging now. But again, I just found those like longer ones to just be freaking, those were super challenging there. Breathing wise, what do you, again, like I'm assuming the lower intensity stuff, you're more focused on like nasal breathing versus like
Hmm.
mouth, or do you not really focus on that?
Yeah, 100% nasal. I don't open my mouth at all when I'm doing zone two. And I also do the new science is showing that respiratory rate is actually one of the best indicators of output. And so I've been really trying to focus on keeping my respiratory rate at 14 to 15 breaths a minute when I'm doing zone two, as it seems to, I talked to Mike Nelson about this. It seems like anything over 15 breaths a minute is beginning to push you out of zone two. So I really try to keep it at 15 or slightly less. And that's been fun as an experiment or not fun, depending on how you look at it.
Hmm.
But
It's been a challenge though
it's
to
been
get to that point.
so I've been nasal breathing on my zone two for years.
Yeah.
The nasal breathing part, not an issue, but focusing on the breaths that are more deliberate, because I tend to breathe a little bit shallower just naturally with a little bit faster cadence. So when I have to sit there and think about the fact that I need a 2 second inhale and a 2 second exhale, because that's 4 seconds, which takes you to 15 breaths a minute, I just have to be more cognizant of my breath. And it's something that I'd like to make second nature. As we get into the higher zones, I am not nasal breathing at all. I
Yeah, you
basically
can't.
just shift immediately to the higher gear and I go straight mouth. I try to be cognizant of using nasal breathing on the recovery periods. Harder on the 30-30s because your heart rate is still elevated. But if I was doing like a 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, or a 3-2 type thing, I would try to get to a point where I was nasal breathing to facilitate better recovery on the breaks. Like I said, 30-30s are tough to do that though.
Yeah, just so everyone like again, the thought process being if you can get that breath rate down during your on the off time, like that's going to help with your recovery and kind of get you into that. You're not going to get,
Parasympathetic,
well,
yeah.
yeah, I feel like you're not going to get into parasympathetic
Right.
because but you're trying to trend towards that way as much as you can. Whereas like the mouth breathing and stuff like that's where a lot of people end up breathing like that anyways, and then they are always in that sympathetic state. Breath work, man, super interesting to me. That's one thing that I've tried to focus on just because again, I never really have in the past. And when I say breath work, I'm talking like just breathing in general, how that works, and like trying to catch myself from mouth breathing and seeing if I do it, but then also focusing more on nasal breathing in general. And I've really been trying to work on that in the longer duration cardio sessions there.
Yep.
Good overview on cardio there. I guess from your weight training, what does that kind of look like now for you?
Yeah, so I had been doing for a long time up until March. I had been doing this 2 times a week full body, kind of old school abbreviated style training. And then in March, I just had this desire to go back to a split routine, but I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't like typical split, kind of something that would still be conducive to my biking. And in doing so, it had a day that was strictly focused on the lower body. And I was just getting way too sore from that day. I did it for a few months, March, April, half of May. And I just had a few days where the leg workout crushed me so bad that I wasn't able to do the cardio with the effectiveness that I wanted to for multiple days afterwards. And so, in unison with on my podcast, Eat, Train, Prosper, we just did a two-part series on pre-steroid era training where everybody just did full body workouts 3 times a week. And I decided to start doing that again. So I'm actually doing it way differently this time, like an experiment. I've never in my entire life done a workout routine that only had one set for every single exercise. But I've been trending toward this for a while because in my brain, as I've been going through my workouts, I've often reflected on how I feel like oftentimes one set feels like enough, especially on certain movements. Like other movements, it doesn't always feel like enough, but sometimes it does feel like enough. And so I've been trending toward this idea of implementing a program that has just one set for every exercise across the board and just seeing what it feels like, how it affects the intensity and the focus that I bring to each of those sets, having each set basically go to failure or 0 to 1 RIR, partials for short stuff, basically taking anything that I do to the point where I feel like I couldn't really do another rep. And I just started that last week. So I'm 1 week into my new training program, which is exactly body, 3 days a week, one set for every exercise. There's 7 exercises per workout. Back is separated into back and lats. So that's the only muscle group that gets more than 3 weekly sets. It actually gets 6 because you get 3 for back and then 3 for lats. But quads get 3, hamstrings get 3, chest gets 3, shoulders get 3. What am I missing? Biceps get 2 and triceps get 2. And then I'll throw in abs and calves if I feel like it.
So you're hitting what? Did you say you're hitting quads? Like that means you're hitting it 3 times a week then.
3 times a week with 1 set. Yeah.
And exercise selection, are you going for more?
Yeah, so they change every day for the 3 sessions and then it will repeat the next week. But one of the quad days has pendulum squat, one has hack squat, and one has leg extension.
Okay, so you're still getting the same movement patterns and just spread out. Plus, a leg extension, you're probably not going to get a lot of damage from one set of leg extension.
The whole point of this experiment is essentially to try to mitigate any soreness in my lower body at all. Just literally have zero soreness. And so far, so good. I did the pendulum squat and the leg extension, zero soreness, but really solid stimulus. And then for the hams, I did leg curl one day and RDL the other day. And then today I have hack squat and 45-degree hip extension each for 1 set. And then because the hip extension is short overload, I'll probably do partials until I can't really move at the bottom.
And again, I guess before I ask that, what do those kind of look like here with this?
Yeah, so it's 2 to 3 warm-up sets per movement. If the movement needs 3, I do 3. If I can get away with 2, I'll do 2. The final warm-up set is probably 4 to 5 RIR, depending on the movement. So I wouldn't say that there's zero stimulus from that set, but it's definitely not like a proper working set either.
And the rationale is you brought up like the pre-steroid bodybuilding. It's funny because my first kind of intro into like really talking about programming was Mind Pump, right? And so they have their programming, and a lot of their programming was based on like full body, right? It wasn't as low as 1 set, but it was like 3 full body days. Would you say it's backed by science, or is this more you think like there?
So first off, the pre-steroid era guys were not training with 1 set to failure. That really wasn't a thing. That started more in the Nautilus days. So in the late 1960s, 1970s, Arthur Jones invented Nautilus, which was the first real commercially available machines. Prior to that, there were pulley systems and there were certain machines available, but most people were prioritizing free weight exercises. Like Steve Reeves, one of the guys we focused on in our series, he has leg curls in his program that he wrote about in his book, but they're partner assisted leg curls. There wasn't a machine that he was using for them. He had a partner literally helping him provide resistance for his leg curls. I wouldn't say that this is the way they trained. They were more of a 5x5, 3x6 type approach. Again, 3 times a week, full body. So that part was similar. But the Nautilus brought the 1 set to failure approach, and that became popular for a decade as Arthur Jones ran through and began training some of the top bodybuilders. And then you had Menser come in, and he also was like a 1 set to failure kind of guy, not through his entire career, but he gravitated there eventually. As far as whether I feel like this is backed by science or not, you have those guys now that are speaking the social media language, like Paul Carter and the like, who are talking about how frequency is so important. And they'll say things like 3 sets once a week is maintenance, but 1 set 3 times a week is growth. And I don't know how much I agree with that. I don't know how confident I am in the science that they're citing in doing that. But you also, at the same time, do see a lot of stuff coming out now, even from Brad Schoenfeld recently. I saw a graph on his page where he was pointing out that something like, I think it was 3 to 4 weekly sets to failure were elicit growth in whatever population they studied of trained individuals, whatever that means. And yeah, like in some ways it feels to me as if the Paul Carterism of 1 set 3 times a week could be growth and 3 sets once a week is not. I don't know whether that's right, but it feels to me like doing 1 set 3 times a week gives me like a really solid response 3 times a week. And we know that the majority of the gains come from the first set that you do, and then it's diminishing returns for every set thereafter. So it would make sense logically that if you could have 3 sets of quads where each set was a 100% effort where you're going into it fresh, that would in fact be more effective than doing 3 sets of quads and then waiting 6 days. So yeah, to me, putting it all together, it may elicit growth for me. It may not. That's why I'm doing it, to figure it out. And I also think that there's the aspect of individual nature. If you're somebody that can't really go there and push yourself and grind through like really slow concentrics at the end of a set, then no, you probably are not going to do great with low volumes. So I think it just really depends on the person as well.
Yeah, I mean that skill needs to be there. You need to take it, and you obviously need to have the right tension and everything like that too throughout. Whereas somebody who's only been training for a year and they can't get there just doing 1 set, per day, they're going to be missing out on the intensity side of things. And they probably need to do a little bit more volume to make up for that intensity a little bit there. That is super interesting, because one of the things I did want to talk to you about was like frequency in general. So it almost seems like for you, you're saying, because from my understanding, a lot of the research around frequency is, hey, volume equated, frequency isn't a huge thing. But based on what you're saying, and like it almost like we could use frequency as a way to get more high quality kind of volume, essentially. Is that kind of where you would stand for that?
That's exactly what I'd say. Yeah. And like you have the research from Krieger from a few years ago that showed that there was a maximum in session volume or per session volume. And then you've seen Jake Remmert, Jake from Data Driven Strength recently came out with a meta that sort of validated what Krieger was saying as well. And so it does seem like there is a per session limit. Jake's data showed that per session limit was way higher, but I think the combination of all of the different research that's out there, and not all of it's to failure, not all of it's untrained individuals, like a lot of them likely don't have the skill to go there that we just talked about. And so I know Jake Remmert's data showed that there seemed to be 11 sets in a session for me on any single muscle group would put me in the grave. Like even 5 years ago, I could have done 11 sets because I just didn't have the skill that I have now to go there, maybe 7 years ago. But now, man, 11 sets of anything, I'm done.
That's so crazy that you bring that up, because I just, and we may have talked about this in the past and like throughout, like whenever I check in with you and stuff like that. But dude, I just feel like I used to be able to do up to 3 to 5 sets per exercise. And like now, like I'm to the point where I'm like, dude, Bryan, right now, I don't even want to do like any intensity techniques. I just want to get my 2 sets in. I'm sure some of that's just like where I'm at right now with life. But I also just feel like I don't know if I could actually do 3 to, like you said there, like 3 to 5 sets. Like for me, even 2s, I feel like and again, I don't know if that's like a skill thing. I'm assuming it is, right? Just being able to just push myself more, and therefore I just need less volume now, maybe in the past. I'm assuming that's likely what
it has to be. Like it's a skill piece, and it's also like an RIR piece. Like I think when you're doing 3 to 5 sets of something, and then you're having to do another exercise after that for 3 sets, and then another one after that for 2 sets or whatever, if you're getting to 11 sets, there's going to be some inherent sandbagging that goes on in your brain. Like you're just not going to go there the same way as if, you're told on a piece of paper that you have 3 sets for back today. Go make the best of them. That's all you get. You're just going to do more, and you're going to get more out of it.
Yeah. With the frequency thing too, like again, they in the research have said, hey, like volume equated. But from my understanding, it's like, hey, we probably want to hit each muscle group at least twice a week versus again, if we're doing, the key thing with frequency is, hey, that's going to allow you to get more high quality volume in. But if you're only doing say 4 to 8 sets, I guess now we're still saying, hey, it's probably best to at least split that up into 2 separate sessions versus just doing all in one once a week.
I agree with that. The old insight used to be that if you're doing more than the maximum per session volume, then you should split it into 2. So if you were doing 16 sets for a muscle group, you'd rather do 8 on one day and 8 on the other day than 16 on one. That makes total sense to me. I actually think that applies though to anything. Like you could say, I'm going to do 4 sets for the week for a muscle group, and it would still be better to do 2 on one day and 2 on another day than 4 on a single day.
That's what I was thinking there, but that's where it gets tricky, right? Like where you said, it's like you do higher volumes, it makes sense. Hey, split that up into at least 2 sessions. But then when it gets to that, like, again, that magic of what, 8 to 11 sets or whatever per session or whatever they say, it's if you go lower than that, should you still split it up? And I agree. I think you should. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. So cool. Is there anything else on frequency that we missed or you want to chat about there?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. I do need to run. I have another call here, but I felt like this was a really good session, good session, whatever you want to call it, a podcast episode. Catching up with you, man. Is there anything else that you have coming up or anything else that you want to let the audience know about or anything?
Check out my pre-steroid series, the 2-part series on my podcast, Eat, Train, Prosper, and then check out my other non-fitness related podcast, Life Reflected.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, Aaron is freaking looking huge, dude. I can't, every time I see him, I'm just like, Jesus.
Yeah, he's doing all the things right now.
He definitely is putting on size though, for sure. All right, Bryan, man, really appreciate your time, dude. We will obviously get you back on here again in a couple, not weekly, but in a couple months again to catch up and everything like that.
So, sounds good, buddy. Great to talk to you, Jeff.
Yep. Thanks for coming on, man. Talk to you soon.
Later.